Joan, you have big blue eyes.
This is the story of Joan. Joan, who was beauty and magic and music and laughter. A 7-year-old perfect little girl. A brownie Girl Scout who loved to dance and played the piano by ear. Who was mischievous and playful and smart and funny. A little angel who was abducted, beaten, sexually molested, murdered, mutilated, and finally dumped in the woods by an assassin harboring anger and cruelty of unfathomable depths. This is the story of Hillsdale, a beautiful, quiet suburban community. A wonderful place to raise a family, a place where you felt safe. This is the story of Joseph McGowan, a high school science teacher in a neighboring town. He was Joan's neighbor, who savagely and brutally raped and murdered this beautiful child one sunny April afternoon in 1973, and then drove her body to upstate New York and disposed of it like garbage in Harriman State Park. This is also the story of Rosemarie D'Alessandro, Joan's mother. She has tirelessly worked with her 2 sons to change the laws in our country, to protect children, and to fight for victims' rights. Last but not least, it's my story. I am Peggy Fraser O'Connor. I am a producer. I am a mother. I was Joan and Joseph McGowan's neighbor. I was Joan's babysitter. This is her story, told through my eyes. I moved to Hillsdale with my mother, father, grandmother, and my Aunt Jackie when I was 5 years old. Our block consisted of only 5 houses. I lived across from Joan's family, her mother Rosemarie, father Frank, and siblings Frankie and Marie. The D'Alessandros had no neighbors on their left side. It was just a wooded area that was not developed. The Sheelys and the D'Amicos lived on either side of me. They were there before we moved in. It wasn't a transient neighborhood. In the corner house to my left, facing the major street, lived the Colliers. Mr. Collier was an FBI agent. On the opposite corner, facing another major thoroughfare, lived Joseph McGowan, his mother, and his grandmother. My father was a highly esteemed Baptist minister. I was never afraid on my block. It never occurred to me to be afraid. Who would be? The last 2 years of Joan's life, I would occasionally babysit for their family. I was 15 at the time. I would frequently see them playing in the front yard together. Joan was one terrific little kid. The last memory I have of her was seeing her outside playing a game of chase with her brother and sister. Something happened that struck her so funny, and she threw her head back and just laughed hysterically. Her laugh was infectious. She would start laughing, and then you would be laughing, and you wouldn't even be sure what you were laughing about. On April 19th, 1973, Joan Angela D'Alessandro walked down her front steps to deliver Girl Scout cookies to her neighbor on the corner. She could see his house from her porch. Do you see her face? The twinkle in her eyes? Her smile? Take a good, long look. Joseph McGowan beat her face to a pulp. Her skull and neck were fractured. Her teeth loosened. Her upper lip and chin cut. and her lungs and liver bruised. After beating her, he strangled her, not once, but twice, just to make sure she was really dead. She was unrecognizable. He didn't just destroy her innocence and kill her. He wanted her annihilated. Joseph McGowan confessed. He was tried and convicted of the rape and murder of a child. He was given a life sentence. He would be eligible for parole within 7 to 14 years. Yes, you heard me. In the words of John Douglas, New York Times best-selling author and FBI profiler, how do you rehabilitate someone who has never been habilitated in the first place? I wonder, what gauge do you use to determine that animal-like behavior won't occur again? Do you want to take that chance and be wrong? I loved growing up in Hillsdale. I loved the crumb buns from the bakery on Saturday mornings. I loved sledding down St. Nicholas Avenue when the roads were closed for snow days. I rode my bike all over that town to see my friends. I loved being a Girl Scout. I have close friends who still live in that town. I eventually moved away because I got married and my work is now in Dallas, Texas. I will always call Hillsdale my home. I returned this past January to perform in a musical review to help raise scholarship money for the arts at Pascack Valley, the local high school. Every child should be able to grow up in a community like that. Joseph McGowan's behavior is not an indictment of Hillsdale or an indictment of the Girl Scouts. It simply means that evil has no zip code, and it is no respecter of persons. It just is. It can happen anywhere. It can happen in your town. When Rosemarie D'Alessandro found out that Joseph McGowan was eligible for parole, she said she cried uncontrollably for one day and then said, "Well, that's enough of that. It's time to get busy." With the assistance of her two sons, John and Michael, she runs a nonprofit organization dedicated to victims' rights and the furtherance of justice for children. In 1998, President Clinton signed Joan's Law into federal law. It has been 40 years. Only 2 states have adopted this law, New York and New Jersey. Unfortunately, it was not retroactive for Rosemarie. Every time Joseph McGowan has been up for parole, she has had to relive this over and over again. To date, his parole has been denied. Rosemarie has fought an uphill battle with great misunderstanding of her motives. It is not that she's unwilling to let go of her dead child and move on. She doesn't need attention. She doesn't do this for therapy. She is a mother who is on a mission. Nothing will bring Joan back to her. The work she does is for you and for me. It is for our children. In her words, she has picked up the purpose. And I, for one, thank God that she has. Joan's law is simple. If you murder a child under the age of 14 in the act of sexual assault, and you are given life imprisonment, it means life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Currently, there is a bill before the New Jersey State Legislature to change the age to 18. The law for victims' rights simply means that there is no statute of limitations for victims' families to be able to sue for compensation in a civil suit. Now, this is your story. It has been said that evil prevails when good men do nothing. What if it was your child? What message do we send to our children when depraved individuals mutilate and destroy them, and then we give criminals a life sentence only to let them out to do it all over again? Rosemarie could have desperately wanted the death penalty. Some might not have agreed with her, but they certainly could have understood her. She could have curled up in a ball in the corner of the room for the past 40 years with unspeakable grief. Instead, she created an organization named Joan's Joy, and she gives inner-city children a chance to have wonderful experiences they never, ever would have had without her. Instead, she fights for people to remember Joan, so that this travesty of justice will not be allowed to afflict us. She asks the simple question: if we don't do something, how will this ever stop? We can send a loud message to perpetrators. If you choose to do this, you will never be out again. You will die in prison. We can, by our actions, show our children that we value their lives. They are our greatest resource. They are the treasure of our hearts. They are the future of our nation. I implore you to contact the representatives of your state and ask them to pass Joan's law. It has taken 40 years to get this far, and we can't afford to wait any longer. There will be a monument for Joan placed by the train station in Hillsdale. It will have a butterfly garden around it. It will celebrate her life and commemorate the laws which protect children that have been passed as a result of her murder. I hope that everyone who sees it when they come home from work will say a quiet thank you or say a prayer for Rosemarie. Then I hope that they will go home and hug their children tightly. I hope that they will remember that change in our society for the better often comes at a hefty price. Joan D'Alessandro and her family paid the price. I'm just asking that you stand with them and make the sacrifice worth it. Godspeed, Joan. I love you, and I promise that I will always remember. Until we meet again.
smiling fair. She's a joy, she's my friend. When I go out, I stay in. A loving, fun, free spirit you've always been. Gentle is her style, a strong, sincere, selfless way.